So, hi everyone. I'm here with Daniel Gregory today. So, he's the head of partnerships at Invevo. Daniel, thanks very much for joining me again.
Thank you, Chris.
Um,
Nice to be
uh,
here.
so I suppose just to kick off, I suppose what's been happening since we last spoke with the Invevo guys, just in terms of that whole sort of like digital collections, digital kind of processing, and digital adoption piece. What have you been seeing over the last be 6 months or so?
There's been a lot of take up. It just seems like people kind of starting to understand that there's so many elements to what our platform is doing, but the trends that we're seeing is that there seems to be much more emphasis on data, high quality data, especially not just in, for example, credit risk, but also actually use of data
Mm,
correctly in like building kind of workflow processes that are
mm.
enhanced, using data, really data driven decisions that make your process much more efficient.
Mm. And do you think is that sort of changing, or is that sort of changing? But like people just getting more into actually like sourcing the right data?
I just think awareness is improving. What we typically find is that companies, especially the large mid-tier and enterprise-sized companies, will have numerous different data sources.
Mm,
Okay, and those data sources are not really talking to each other efficiently. They may have an ERP system, but they're not connecting properly with each other. What we do is consolidate your data into one place and then give you the ability to start orchestrating it so that you get to see the data that is specifically relevant to your role.
So would you say a part of the challenge has been the fact that the data has been in disparate areas rather than being in one location? And so like people are saying, well, how do I now get all that data into a single location? Whereas,
Yeah.
and which is around the building awareness a bit.
That's precisely, yeah. And it's just basically people until now consolidating data has been traditionally a very difficult thing to do, and
Mm,
then you're having to jump between different systems, or the system that you may have may not have the power and the agility to literally pull everything, and then you then have the ability to build for example, a dashboard that draws in the data that you specifically want to see. Yeah, I think that what we have now is people are aware that, oh, actually, yes, I can use that data.
mm,
Beforehand, it would have been a very laborious task for me to lift that data and cross it over with the other data points I've got, and it makes for a very laborious process that it's not an instant thing, and it starts building elements of stress into your process.
It's quite interesting what you're saying there around almost like a change that's going on. Whereas we'd always be very focused on features or the output. What does something do? What does it look like? Does it have the way it's presented? And it sounds like what you're seeing is people almost like moving on, almost like the end output to say, actually, getting the data is actually pretty important in terms of making sure the output's good, which has always been the case, but
Yeah.
it's also the data piece can be maybe seen as being a little bit less interesting. It sounds like that's changing around a little bit. So there's a much greater awareness around doing the data stuff first is
Yeah.
important. What do you think's changed to
I think, well,
create that
because
environment?
yeah, I think that what one, people are realizing how important data is, but two, they're also important. What's vitally important is the cleanliness of that data, the strength of
Mm,
that data, and it's what that means is creating a culture within the workplace that people really concentrate on the quality of the data they're putting
mm,
into the system, whether it's in their
mm,
CRM tool, whether it's in their accounting tools, whatever the software they're using. It's about having good quality data in there, clean data, rather
mm,
than it all being discombobulated and being very hard to pull together. Once you've built that culture, then again, as I say, people are starting realizing, actually, yes, that if I have that data or metrics on, for example, I don't know what would we say? For example, a credit risk alert is raised against one of your clients.
mm,
Okay, what if that we know what the quality of that data, and we then have a process built in place with triggers that effectively put a customer on hold, sends out the first stunning letter, alerts the salesperson, sends an alert to the credit risk department, and you start building up this kind of process that affects is if the data is clean, you can start building up really efficient automated processes on the back of it that really, again, what go back to that streamlining of a process that eventually leads to far more efficiency.
mm.
But it does boil down to having really good quality data and keeping it clean.
A lot's been talked, especially last year, on AI, and I suppose that, with the large language models, it really hasn't stopped, but it seems like it's gone out of the headlines a little bit since the start of the year. What are you hearing there in terms of like adoption around that or interest in AI? It's almost like if you put AI into something, it would get a lot of interest and attention, but that feels like that's gone away a little bit. But it is really data anyway. But what are you hearing when you're out chatting with people? Is this the same kind of level of interest in, almost like as a buzzword?
Yeah, it's definitely a buzzword. Definitely, there's a feeling. Well, I'm seeing two things here. I'm seeing people scared of it. There's a hell of a lot of ignorance in it, and I think various software providers, suppliers, are often banning AI as part of their offering, and when very often it's not actually the case. We offer pros intelligent automation. It's it's a very different thing to AI. AI has lots of brilliant possibilities, and but it's still very much something that is person needs to be involved in that process, whether it's cleansing data, whether it's, let's say in credit risk departments, it's being that it's the AI has collected all of this different data sources about building this risk profile of person, but it still needs that human intervention to still, I feel, make that final decision, etc. AI has this infinite capabilities, but ultimately, human interaction is still very much part of it, and it's educating people to understand that yes, it will, like intelligent automation, it will reduce certain tasks. It will take certain jobs away from people, but then it also frees them up to become way more innovative and creative. It gives them more time to start looking at if you're sitting around doing manual emails all day and sending out various communications to people, you're making phone calls. If a lot of those manual tasks can be taken away from you by creating much more efficiency via intelligent automation and the use of AI, then you're freed up to start concentrating on wider process complexities and where are the blockers that are blocking that efficiency. So for me, AI is, again, going back to what we talked, there is an awareness. It may have calmed down a little bit now. It seems to, like when I was going on LinkedIn, literally every other advert on LinkedIn was about someone's ideas on AI. I think there was this burst, and it has quietened down a bit. Without doubt, AI is going to be playing a very important part of our future. But if you look at the stats on jobs and security and things like that, we're actually looking at positive impacts of AI. It will actually be net creator of jobs.
Yes, like data, it's like it hasn't gone away. Things are still being done in the background, but almost like the ability of it to be able to drive sales feels like that as the buzzword, is because it moves, doesn't it? Like cloud was one as an example. It felt like that was an ability to, I don't know, be like 5-6 years ago. The reality is we were talking about it then, everyone's getting excited about it on the cloud. There weren't that many people on cloud. Now solutions, even like you guys, is all on cloud, right? Now it's accepted, right? But we're not talking about it, but actually the work has been done for it actually to be there. And I just wonder if the same thing is going to happen with AI, which is, we talked about it a lot last year. Now the work's getting done quietly in the background, and like in 5 years' time, that we'll see a lot more of these things, but we'll just accept it.
Yeah, definitely the case. For example, cloud is the perfect example. We were all using hard drives, and clouds has just changed the way we and it's been a very subtle kind of stealth-like, but we've all kind of switched over to cloud gently without even realizing. For the most part, the majority of us are using the cloud for the majority of what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And that has given us way more power than just simply relying on various hard drives, and less, again, going back to, say, Invevo. If we were asking people to download this onto their hard drives, you're restrictive. We're giving you, the cloud has given us so much processing power now, and that's why these things like data, AI, all these things that are now become the next evolutionary step, is because we've got this vastly increased data processing abilities through the cloud. And I think AI will be that kind of same thing. It will be people are already using AI without even realizing. When they're on Netflix or wherever, and Netflix is suggesting this based on your most recent behavior. Spotify is the same. They're all doing it, and we're using. And even when you're interacting with a lot of professional websites, whether you're going onto your BT account or whoever, Sky account, AI is very much already being utilized there already.
Yeah. And I suppose in terms of some of the stuff that you guys do in terms of like automation and data and those kind of things, what are you finding in terms of, I think last time we talked a little bit about technophobia or what people are afraid of in terms of like barriers or sort of like upgrading some of these things? Because I still see a lot of legacy systems, still see a
Yeah.
lot of sort of legacy processes, and it's not easy to change them as well.
No. I think there are, again, numerous factors there. I think if you're looking at say, credit management, credit collection departments, very often, by the time you've got to seniority, you're probably in your late 30s onwards. And I think there's an element there that certain people who have not adopted technology in the past will look at their, we're using Excel spreadsheets and these accounting softwares and whatever. It's always worked.
Mm.
So why would I change that? Now, like everything,
If it ain't broke, don't
if
fix it, sort of
it
thing.
ain't broke, don't fix it. But for
Yeah.
me, and sometimes the idea of bringing on board a new supplier, a new technology can be quite daunting because you have to go through that process of understanding, learning a new system. And I'll be honest with you, I was in the city for 36 years as a broker and a trader. I was fairly good at it after 36 years. Coming into this world has been a very scary thing for me because at 54, I've had to learn a brand new job, brand new industry, and there was a good 18 months when I was honestly thinking, God, am I really stupid? I'm just not getting
Mm.
this. And
Mm.
then suddenly it just starts clicking and falling into place. I can understand why people are scared of new things, but very often when you do look at them and you have to take the time to sit down and look at what they're capable of, they're without doubt, they can really, they can take your process and then put it on steroids. Your ideas of how you would like to implement process efficiency, orchestrating certain dispute management kind of automation, and say credit risk automation, onboarding new clients, compliance side of things. There's so many elements of it that you go, all right, if I had the tool, I would be able to do this. The tools are there now. You can
Mm.
do this. And it's basically educating people to say, look, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't need to be a developer. You don't need to be super tech savvy to use these products. They're user friendly. It's like using your iPhone. They're that simple now. So it's getting people to understand, yes, you can got these infinite possibilities now with the right product, and two, not to be frightened of adopting them. Three, yes, there's going to be an initial outlay for these things, but depending on the tool,
Mm.
that tool is going to have a huge return on investment, more than pay for itself.
Mm.
Infinite, 10 times so, multiple times over.
We were chatting about this actually this morning, actually, around like the psychology of getting older, as an example. And I'm going to use a different example. Remember, we used to have paper statements and bank branches and those kind of things. And I remember going through that change when everything's moved to being much more online. And and there was a lot of feedback around people were really quite fearful around not having a bank statement, as an example, because it's all going to be online and could you trust it online and those kind of
Yeah,
things. And how much of that is a function of getting older in terms of like when you were younger, it's very quick. You're used to learning new things, new processes. It's all new anyway. So you just learn the
yeah,
way it works and you adopt it. When you get a little bit older, you rely much more on experience, right? So this is the way
yeah,
things always used to work. And I can rely on that. And I don't need to learn new things. Maybe I'm out of practice of learning new things. So therefore, I'm a little bit fearful around adopting things. And actually, I get quite upset if things change the way they always used to be, because now I'm having to navigate the world in a different way. And it's almost that sort of like psychology that kind of changes between, I suppose, younger people and older people and adoption. And so you go through this thing. And I just wonder if the same thing's going to happen with AI to a certain extent. We actually probably just need to adapt to it.
yeah. I think, yeah, I think with technology and our generation in particular, I think there's the one of the kind of psychological blockers were, I'm a little bit older than you, but in the 70s and 80s, or especially in the 80s when I'm in my teens, and computers was all something that you had to be uh, really interested in, becoming a programmer. You had to understand how to write code,
Yeah.
and that was like a domain for a certain type of individual. So there was that fear factor that, I won't be able to pick up. I remember I had a ZX Spectrum and then a Commodore 64. All I ever used it for was to
Playing
play
games.
Daley Thompson's Olympics thing, Daley Thompson decathlon with the buttons going. I would never have been
And
able to code.
your X and Z were probably
Yeah,
like completely worn out due to him running.
exactly.
There was, yeah.
Yeah, and whereas I never ever learned to code. So
Mm,
there was that in the back of my mind, whenever I looked at screens, unless it was something that I could just touch and do straight away, they were always holding this fear factor for me that, oh, if I wanted to delve any deeper into using a computer, I'm going to have to understand code. So there was an element of, I don't want to expose myself as being that ignorant on writing
mm,
code. I can't write code, but we've got developers who do all that work for us, and they just give us a product that we can just tap on and move from here to there. And I can create flow charts to create a process. I can create a visual flow chart, connect one thing to there, connect one thing to there. If this event happens, then I'll connect it to this reaction. I I don't have to code anything. Once I'm happy with my flow chart, I can basically just press activate and it will put that process into play. And it'll be running constantly until, and I can measure it. I can see if that process is working effectively, it's not working effectively. I just take it back and I start orchestrating it again and implement it straight away. This is not something I have to send off as an IT request. This is instant configuration that, like as a 54-year-old tech ignorant person, I know I can confidently pick up and do myself now,
mm.
which there was that element before where I was frightened of it. If you're a young person, you've grown up being surrounded by technology that's already, all the hard work's already been done. You're just using the interface and
Mm.
playing around with the interface. Then you're much more open to it. Yeah, for me, that's where a lot of the
How
issues
do you
lie.
think how do you think we get beyond that? Even if you go back to your younger self when you're like on your ZX Spectrum, do you think it's a question of just trying it, or do you think
Yes.
what's the psychology we need to go through in terms of adopting some of those things? And then I suppose how do we then evaluate the benefit of adopting one thing versus the other as well?
Again, it depends on the personality. I'm more of a suck it and see kind of thing. If someone sends across a manual to me, I'll look, go, oh, that's a bit scary. Do you mind just showing it to me?
Mm,
And so it's a case of, if demos, for example, in a platform like ours, what is the harm in having booking a demo just to understand you? And you can basically send in, look, this is my process. I'm looking to build efficiency in these parts of my process. Can you demonstrate how you would do that?
mm,
And then we'll just, within 5 minutes, we'll go, yes, we've got this part of our platform. We can start building these intelligent automation around this. This is how you would do it. This is how you measure it. It's that simple. And then people will go, wow, oh, really? That is available right now.
mm,
Yes, that is out
mm,
of the box for you. So it's a case of the personality themselves get involved in it. It's like anything, like wine, like literature, like
yeah,
I'm learning the trumpet. I'm never going to learn the trumpet unless I pick up and start
and have a
giving it a
go.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like the iPhone or the smartphones, particularly started with the iPhones, done an awful lot in terms of almost like this suck it and see type or this trial and error or agile, you might call it, approach, isn't it? Which is
Yeah.
no, I have never read a manual on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Never read one, but by and large, you just try it. You can fail gracefully because either it works or it doesn't work, which is a lot of thought into that. But it's a way of learning, really. And I just wonder if that sort of like agile approach is coming through in even in terms of like more like corporate kind of software as well. So where you can try it maybe in a safe space, but it allows you to learn it very quickly.
Yeah. That's the thing. What we often offer is a sandbox environment. We'll
Mm,
basically say, look, we've got a system that you can use right now. Why don't we'll give you a week or so to play around with it, get comfortable
mm,
with it. Any questions, just come back to us. If you like it, buy it. If you don't, then we
mm,
understand. But 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, if someone basically gets that sandbox environment, they look at it and they've utilized, they look at what it can possibly offer, they come back immediately and go, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, that's going to change our lives. As did the mobile phone. It's not just to pick up and make phone calls anymore. If you, I was sitting on the train, Elizabeth line yesterday going into London, and I was probably the only person on my carriage reading a book.
yeah, yeah,
Everyone else was on their phone. As soon as I got off the train, I was using my phone because I had my headphones on, listening to my music. It's
yeah,
become such a prominent part of our lives. In some ways, too prominent, very scary. But it's a way that it's, and these programs that we're talking about in terms of work, business process automation, they are just as user friendly.
mm,
If the right technology is just as user friendly, it's just a case of giving it a try, or at
mm,
least having a look at it, what it can do. And you'll
mm,
be, what I'll say to anyone using like still Excel spreadsheets and that kind of very what we look at as very old-fashioned technology,
Mm,
just have a look,
mm,
because it's not like we're not telling you it's the only, but it's inevitable. If you don't take it, someone in your team, as it's happening. You can't
mm,
deny it. You can't just hold something like, especially process management, you can't keep that in the past, because if you do, you're going to ultimately suffer the consequences of that. There's a cost that comes, and especially in a an economic climate like now, everyone is focusing on cost. Cost can be massively reduced with the right technology. There is no
yeah.
doubt about it. And
And
if
then,
you're a numbers cruncher, which your collections credit management team are, then that's the first process you should be looking at, not just your sales and marketing teams. You should be looking at your own in-house collections team process.
and I suppose that's the whole trial and error approach allows you to adopt new things quicker,
Yeah,
which can then be cheaper as well to a certain extent. I just find it fascinating about how this almost like agile approach, and we used to be very, even in academia, we used to be very almost like engineering approach, which would like, we'll have set out what the problem was, would think through it, would intellectually think through it, because that was the only tool we had to then come with a solution. Now it feels like we can probably just throw 1,000 things at the wall and work out which one works best, and it's a much more like almost like organic or evolutionary type approach to actually getting things done. And we saw that in like how you actually use the iPhone as an example to learn how to do it. I just wonder if we're going to start to see that sort of basically starting to permeate much more through into agile design, but then also system adoption, what we
yeah,
can actually do. Are we going to start creating those almost like ecosystems as well, where
yeah.
we can pick the best really?
Well, yeah, going back to the cloud example, right? With the cloud, what the cloud example has done is basically it's given the ability of technology like ours
Mm,
to start instantly, very easily integrating with other systems. And
mm,
I watched the Oppenheimer film the other night for the first time,
mm,
and on my understanding of him, that was his brainchild, and he was responsible for this all on his own. When you see the
mm.
film, it was a collab. There were numerous of
How many
people
people?
involved in
Yeah.
it, and it was a huge collaborative process that he happened to be the head of, and he ended up taking all the accolades and ultimately other moral hits on. But what I'm saying is it was a collaborative process. Now, if you are locked in one single piece of platform or a couple of platforms, you are limiting yourself. You
Mm,
are limiting yourself to basically the boundaries of what that particular product can do and offer you.
mm,
But if you've got something that speaks to all of your different platforms and brings them all in together, then surely that is a collaborative process, opens up so many different avenues to
mm.
kind of ideas that you can explore and connect and go, actually, if I connect these processes, it's going to make the whole business work so much better.
And I suppose coming back to your point at the top, it's the data that holds all of that together, isn't it? So if you don't have
Yes.
the data is consistent across all of the different platforms,
Yeah.
and the processing of it, having that data mindset allows you to keep consistency even if things change down the road.
Yeah. What you'll see with organizations with like global presences with offices all over the world, what obviously does need to happen is that there has to be common languages used in terms of just simple names for certain products, certain
Mm,
things going into the system. There has to have to be standardized. A process owner has to take responsibility and say, guys, we're standardizing this across the whole process. But
mm.
once you get that culture and you get that data really nice and clean in the system, then honestly, sky's the limit of what you can do with it in
Yeah.
terms of creating that overall streamlined efficiency that really does create return on investment.
Yeah. So where do you think it goes from here? We can hear it feels like things are changing. It feels like there's probably a concern a little bit around cost, which is probably some of the things that you're probably hearing. But what do you think the themes are? And where do you think it goes if you look at even the back end of this year?
Well, we're working on just constantly making people's lives easier.
Mm,
So we've got a final version of the product that will be going live soon, which is to just updating the user experience, and we're super excited, really excited about that. But again, there are other ways that the system is going to be much mobile phone um, capable, really beautiful experience on a mobile phone, so that various size businesses can, going back to this thing being so important part of your life,
mm,
this you tell my age because I put mine in a wallet.
Yeah.
There's things here that we can do now that we are constantly thinking this is going to make not the user their life so much easier, but then we can connect all different parts. For example, the debt collection, the whole credit collections life cycle from onboarding a client
Mm,
to debt getting to a certain age and passing it on to various legal departments or DCAs.
mm,
We can connect everybody now,
mm,
so that from onboarding to doing the credit risk decisioning, collections, dispute management, then passing that debt on, we with connecting all the moving parts with the right data, and the right system, giving each person along that the relevant data they need to do in order they need in order to operate efficiently, and then feeding it all backwards and forwards. We are super excited about what
mm,
we're
mm.
doing now, giving lenders a different lenders will have a different kind of view on the traditional methods of assessing their borrowers. We'll be able to give you access. The lender will be able to have access to their entire cash flow of a company. So if a borrower is willing to offer it, they'll be able to see the data on their collections processes, and they'll say, actually, yes, these guys, yes, they're a bit short right now, but we know we've got this amount of money coming in. We can see their dispute management's very much on top of their DSO is well under control. It's moving in a direction. Yes, we know they've got money coming in. We'll definitely lend them that money. So there's so many different exciting things that we're seeing right now that will just only can enhance the whole
Yeah.
accounts receivable life cycle end
So,
to end.
it feels like we're sort of making big progress around getting the data and that data understanding, but then almost like the next step is then how do you integrate that across all the different processes, right? And
Yeah,
then there's value within that as well, which is like where it sounds like that's where we're moving to, at least anyway, because it's not just it's the data, but then it's how does it all join up as well?
yeah, yeah. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
We get this data talking. Just even like the customer portals are going to be so much more efficient with
Yeah.
open banking features and all kinds of things now that make it basically gets a company much better control of their working capital,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
ultimately again drives their competitiveness and gives them the ability to expand at the right times and just it's progress to gain that market share that they're looking for.
Yeah. Daniel, thanks very much for making the time. It's great to get a bit of an update, hear how things are changing. It does sound like things are changing.
Yeah,
It's actually,
exciting.
from my point of view, it's great to hear that actually the data is becoming more important because that's I know it can be a big headache, just especially in terms of missing data and getting it all in one place. But once you've done it, it makes a huge difference. So that's good to hear, at least anyway.
Chris, as from our previous discussions, I know data is one of your
It's one of my hot
is one of your
topics.
passions, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
is. Yeah.
this is the thing. I know this is why I know you'll get excited because, as I say, I am fairly new to this, but the longer I'm in it, it's like I'm a kid in a candy store.
Mm,
I was saying sweet store. So for the English listeners, I am English, but
yeah.
there is infinite opportunities now in terms of
Mm,
what really good data management can offer you as a business. And
mm.
I'm just so excited to be in this environment now. And yeah, I'm glad you're as passionate as I am about data.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks very much, Daniel.
Thank you, Chris. Been really nice chatting with you.